All right. Well, good morning. How's everybody doing out there? I'll let the panelists introduce themselves in a little bit, but just for some context, we're in a university setting. We have a range of different stakeholders in the audience today. Some of them are crypto natives. Some of them may not know what a blockchain is. And so with that context, I'd love to turn it over to our distinguished panel here to introduce themselves. Let's start in the room here. Paul, if you'd introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Very honored to be here. Illinois is top 5 in the nation for blockchain, and to follow Vitalik is such an honor. Thank you for having me. I'm Paul Su. I'm CEO and founder of Decasonic. Decasonic is a crypto native early stage venture fund. I'm an investor and operator by background, been doing this since college 25 years ago. In Web 1, I was a VC. In Web 2, I was an operator at Zynga in social gaming. Web 3, been in this since 2013. Bought my first Bitcoin back then and have a investment thesis around blockchain for the billions. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful, thank you. And then we're joined with three other distinguished guests. I'll just go from left to right as I see them. So Suji, would you mind introducing yourself?
Hey everyone, Suji in here from Math Network. And I dropped off from UFI, I think 5 years ago, 2017. And I was doing computer engineering, right? And I believe during my time, a lot of people are quite surprised by the power of Web3. It was time of the ICO bubble, and everyone was crazy about Web3. So I actually picked this venture and dropped off from college. From 2018, we are focused on this Web3 social network. Mass Network is the leading and I think one of the first Web3 social protocol. In 2019, we become the founding community member of Blue Sky, which you might heard that Jack Dorsey of Twitter, he wanted to decentralize Twitter somehow and found this community-driven organization, right? And 2020 and 2021, we raised a lot of money from the VCs and the support from a lot of community OGs, and now reach today. So yeah, I'd love to share my thoughts about how Web3 can change social network and how was my experience from dropping out to now. Yeah.
Thank you. Veda.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Veda Zhu. I got my PhD from URFI in computer science, year 2009. And I'm a data miner and AI scientist by training. So I think I'm wearing double hats here today. So first of all, I joined Singapore Management University after my graduation, and now I'm a tenure professor here. And I'm also the founder and the chief scientist of Symphony. The project is aiming to establish data, especially our individual user data, as an emerging asset class by providing personalized and then democratized data intelligence. Yeah, so happy to see everyone. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And Anatoly.
I'm honored to be here. I was a undergrad at UIUC from 99 to 2003. I have extremely fond memories of working really hard to get a B+ in some of those classes. So really, really pleased to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here. So as we look at this topic today, it's obviously a hot topic. There's been a lot of investment in the last few years, especially through COVID and the pandemic. But with all the hype, there's often some questions is this just a phase? What's really the value behind this blockchain technology? What are these digital assets? And so the question to the panel, and feel free to make this conversational, 10 years from now, what's your vision of how blockchain may impact our lives?
The better question is how blockchain won't impact our lives. This is a horizontal disruption. Blockchain is hitting the mainstream right now. We saw it with the Super Bowl ads. Blockchain today is Internet 2000. When I graduated from college, maybe 10% of us went to internet jobs. That's very similar to today. It was an earlier question about management consulting or banking. very similar in 1997. In 10 years, I think we're going to look back and say, how will we not use blockchain in our daily lives or in our daily work? We're accelerating in this adoption today. In about 10 years, we'll have 1 to 5 billion users on the blockchain.
So I've been, we've been live since about 2020. We really went live right during the double black swan crash. And that was almost, in my mind, the change from the 20th to the 21st century, because you saw the entire world shift all of its activity from general, retail oriented, like brick and mortar oriented to fully online. And that transition was happening during the age of the internet, but really, I think, finally took that big leap during that year. And I think crypto took off for that same reason. It's because it allows people with, if you can figure out how to securely store a seed phrase, you can now coordinate financially with anybody else around the world, and you can form groups, you can make decisions and do all of this over the internet. And that's never been done before. So I think right now our estimate is there's 7 million people globally that on a monthly basis actually sign a cryptographic transaction, and all the blockchains at this, combined. Imagine that's 100 million people, 500 million people. And that growth, we should see in the next 5 to 10 years. I think this is going to transform the world in some ways that are going to be totally unexpected. I wouldn't be surprised if 10 million people decide to pool money together and buy every coal plant in the world and shut them down. Like everything that we care about, like all the bottlenecks and all the organizational problems that we have to take action and actually change the world. I think cryptography is going to change all of it.
Are you starting a DAO to do something in the coal plant area?
I would love to. If anybody's motivated to be that founder and grind it and get that make that realized, I will definitely back them in any way I can.
So with that said, it can be difficult sometimes, the amount of information coming at the average person if it's crypto Twitter or wherever it is, and it can be hard to really focus in on what to focus on. So how do you evaluate different blockchain technologies? And then how could the students at a university like Illinois, both technical and non-technical, get involved in blockchain?
So we're extremely focused on scalability and how do you, there's a lot of engineering challenges, even something as straightforward as Solana, where we're building everything based on hardware acceleration. The engineering problems are a ton of fun, to say the least. So at least the advice I can give to students is pick a technology that will really drive your interest and make you spend the weekend working on a problem or debugging it and make progress where it's really hard to make progress. So because right now we're really in those early days where a lot of the development and the kinds of technologies that are going to win are still unknown. So everything is basically still greenfield. If you think about the space going from the 10 million people that sign things per month to 100 million people, a lot of things need to improve, and a lot of technologies need to just get better and better.
Our story is about blockchain for the mainstream. So we think about how technology inspires, or how culture inspires technology, and then technology transforms culture. So for many of us in the room, start with who you are, what your strengths are. The use cases are still being built out on scalable blockchains like Solana, Cardano, Ethereum. Those use cases will morph into killer apps. The killer apps will transform the world. We're this early. A lot of us have tremendous strengths in this room in your respective fields. And if you believe this is a horizontal disruption, those strengths will transform how we live in the future.
I remember early days of internet. where I think a lot of the narratives were about self-publishing and things like that. But the stuff I was doing was bulletin boards and like chat rooms and all the social stuff. And I could not predict that 20 years from that point, it would be worth like $1 trillion, right? It's just totally inconceivable how the stuff will actually, play out. But do the stuff that you think is fun, and especially that engages you with like the broader community.
I love that. Do the things that you think are fun. Wonderful. So as we look at, you're alluding to some applications as well throughout these answers. And as we look back in the last few years, there's been some significant challenges in the world as it relates to even global supply chains and how do we organize, our information. So looking at our global supply chain area, how does blockchain technology apply to that industry?
I think many of the, sorry, go first. Yeah, sorry.
I'll jump in a little bit. Anatoly mentioned earlier that during COVID, the world accelerated into digital, and somewhat sidestepping the question, the digital supply chain is radically transforming right now. If you consider it as data, context, and applications, tokenized data is happening, tokenized value transfer is happening, the context by which we form DAOs and social relationships is changing, and then the metaverse and hybrid work and Zooms, that's radically changing our interface layer. So somewhat answering it from a digital perspective, you're seeing massive inflation in physical supply chains. In digital, you're seeing radical transformation, in some respects, deflation. So it's great to be optimistic about what's going on in the digital supply chains. And
yeah, I totally agree. And I think the significance of using blockchain in the global supply chain could well go beyond, what people usually think is about efficiency, because once the things are traced with blockchain, you're actually combining the commodity flow, the information flow, the money flow, everything together. And it, just flattens the usually called the marketing funnel or sales funnel, so that now, even the manufacturer will know firsthand who the consumers, right, who are actually buying their stuff, and then so they can produce by design and produce by supply, by demand. So I think, and it also affects, can contribute to the anti-counterfeiting problem that is important for many luxury goods. So I think this is really all these are happening, and with some zero knowledge technology, we are seeing more things being adopted already by some company like for JD or many of these supply chain companies. Yeah.
I just say there's many interesting things we recently granting and exploring, especially the metaverse. Right, I was talking with a Singapore company. They're doing metaverse ads platform, right? And they buy land and then supply advertisements or NFTs on the platform, and they have actually offline join business as a potential customer. So you might be a car manufacturer business, and they actually purchase this NFT and replace this advertisement on the wall of some metaverse building. And when you have metaverse party, they actually see this like car, Tesla advertisement somewhere. And while even though the real Tesla is probably stuck in some like gigafactory, it cannot be delivered, you see, oh, okay, I got Tesla, NFT somewhere. So it feels like I own this Tesla. It's not really solving this supply chain issue, because the supply chain, unfortunately, you have rules. You have physical rules about moving items. You can't say, hey, I'm just gonna, double the speed, right? You can, but you can just say, hey, okay, I feel like I don't really want to just drive this car right now, but I own this NFT, and somehow the car is my asset, and they're gonna come to me one day. And I can trade it just because maybe I've moved to another country, and I can trade it to another friend or another potential buyer. So it is accelerating the transaction. You don't need to have this atom form matter right here with you. You can just accelerate transaction and the speed of circulation within the digital world. And I think like a lot of problem we have today definitely is due to the lockdown, due to the COVID issue of the supply chain issue. But if we can accelerate these transactions and circulation within the digital world, it's actually a lot of like help, and that's my feeling. Yeah.
I would love an NFT as a car.
I'll add a little bit more. In the Midwest in particular, you're seeing a lot of onshoring of local manufacturing. So with the fracturing of supply chains, physical supply chains, you're seeing 3D printing and other DAOs and tokens accelerate. How do you put money together to build local factories, to build local production? Chicago leads some of this area. I'm very proud that a lot of other Midwest investors are looking to fund these areas.
Very nice. So switching industries a little bit here, there's a lot of hype around DeFi specifically. Many of you have had large impacts in this space. So as we look at the DeFi space, are there any applications that you're really excited about? And then DeFi also has some tie-ins to government and regulation, and there's been some talks on central bank digital currencies. Kind of two-part question. What are you excited about, and what do you think the future is given the regulatory environment?
I can go first. So we literally had our slide deck for the Solana seed round that said that it's blockchain at NASDAQ speed. And I thought that we might actually disrupt equities trading and all these other things that are running on NASDAQ and CME. And I've come to realize that we were right about the use case, that the most important thing in blockchains is markets, right? It's running some form of trading or offers and asks and ownership of digital assets. But what I realized over the last year is that everything is DeFi. You look at something like NFTs. Is it a piece of art? Is it membership in a social group? But it's all of those things, but under the hood, it's a smart contract with a financial smart contract that has very specific rights and financial applications about secondary sales and all these other things. And that part was something that I didn't realize, but is now seems pretty obvious to me. Like the kind of use cases that you'll see really take off are the ones that are able to take these financial primitives and then apply them to completely new marketplaces. And when you look at like traditional Web 2, under the hood, there's an ad exchange that's basically taking pixels from your browser and selling them and vectorizing you as a user into some digital form and then posting an offer right in an ad exchange. That's effectively what an NFT does, and from a very, very high level. But the cool thing about NFTs is that it's a business model that doesn't require anyone to steal your data. It runs purely within that community and runs like the value of that community and the engagement and like kind of you can say the value of those NFTs is tied to how healthy that community is and how much cross user activity that exists in that. And that to me is a totally different way to monetize the web than anything that we've seen, in the last 20 years.
Lucky to have Anatoly on this panel. He truly is the godfather of DeFi.
Vitalik, I would say that about Vitalik. I'm fast.
Is safe and secure DeFi. Anatoly believes, blockchain is all DeFi. We believe safe and security for applications is the future and the vision, slightly different, but competing visions of our future technological change is how innovation happens. For mainstream to access DeFi, it has to be safe and secure. We work with other layer ones that provide that safety and security. Cadena is one of our largest investments, one of my executive positions I hold right now, because they enable sufficient guardrails around the programmability of these applications to, provide responsible innovation. And that's the second part of your question around how the Biden administration with the executive order is, ensuring that financial access, financial inclusion, responsible investing is brought to the mainstream. And we're very excited about that.
I have so many follow-up questions from both of those responses, if I may. First, real quick, Anatoly, do you think that it's possible for a DeFi project or the community as a whole to provide some kind of alternate method to like a Google or a Facebook in terms of ad-supported platforms or how we sell data?
I think so. I think it's worth trying. Like it's kind of like early internet. There's a lot of skeuomorphic ideas where we take what works in like brick and mortar and then try to stick it on the internet. And 99 of those failed, but one of them is now Amazon, right? So I think it's definitely worth trying, and it's really important to kind of have a healthy understanding of like starting from that idea and iterating and evolving and trying to figure out where there's actually value. I think it would be tremendously beneficial for us as a society as a whole if we had social platforms that weren't dependent on ads, that had like better identity and better privacy tools. And, all of those things are really, really important. So, if this is what you're thinking about, like, please try it. There's crypto right now has massive amounts of funding, way more capital than there's quality founders chasing great ideas.
Excellent.
There's a lot of things blockchain can do, but fixing like education in the US is probably like a problem that might be too hard.
Fair enough.
Where I hope it helps is, I think like just like the internet, which really put a micro lens on everything that's happening in the world at the same time. I think once we have a large number of people that are used to signing transactions and like being able to coordinate financially, at a global scale, I think we should start, to smooth out some of these like inefficiencies with like student loans and how folks pay for education and things like that. And maybe that'll become more obvious and those solutions will just iterate faster. I think what I've seen like in our experience is, we've had hackathons where a team has gone from an idea to like a product that was in the market with like billions of dollars in TVL in 8 weeks. That is the kind of development that you only see in like app stores on the internet. You publish, you build your product, you now have like users, right? But when you look at finance, banking, and everything else, it takes years to build any product, right? And the iteration is so incremental that none of it is disruptive. So I would hope that where blockchain can help is that once we do have this large base of users with self-custody, that iteration of building new ways to pay for education can be much, much faster. But there's a lot of social problems that just take political will of all of us to fix.
So kind of a follow-up to something we've talked about already. And for the audience, a DAO, we've been using that term a lot, decentralized autonomous organization. It's a way for individuals to come together and to organize themselves in a decentralized way. So it's, if 2 years ago we had the year of the coin offering, last year we had the year of the NFT. This year, what do you guys think? Is this the year of the DAO, or are we too early for that?
I would say a little too early, but I've always been surprised. so I didn't expect how quickly NFTs would take off, or that how quickly DeFi would take off. So as soon as you kind of have a feeling for something is happening in crypto, there's this like ramp up that happens, unexpectedly. DAOs are definitely like one of the like most interesting things that we see folks doing and experimenting with. And it goes from, building funds, right? Like true funds that invest in projects, But when you look at the decision making in the history of those DAOs, there's things like paying for people's coffee and stuff like that in the list, in the historical record on chain. What are they spending their money on? So it's both like a Reddit group mixed with a venture fund. It's a really interesting thing to watch right now.
When we build blockchain for the billions, we think about use cases, and the best way to think about use cases is through verbs and nouns. And so if, in your analogy, Jake, if ICOs were about funding as a verb, NFTs was about profile pictures, individual nouns, DAOs would be the next logical step into that of collective identity, collective nouns. So it's not me, it's we. So you're seeing this micro transition happen in the blockchain revolution. Early stage investors, builders stay attuned to these faint signals from all this noise to go build something big. So, the best way to predict the future is to build it. And you're starting to see this evolution of verbs to individual nouns to collective nouns.
I love that explanation. That's excellent. So along the same lines then, if DAOs are this up and coming next evolution of nouns that we're going to be interfacing with, what kind of tools do we need as a community in order to really empower that community to grow, the DAO community to grow?
So this is like a really hard problem. And I think because of how difficult self-custody is today, like trying to get people to understand what cryptography is, how to store those seed phrases and like do that securely is like a mental block that people have, similar like to how the internet, mid 90s, nobody understood what a browser was or what a link was. And it took like human timeframes for people to figure out what that stuff is and to actually start using these tools. And when you saw that number go to like, a few 100 million, that's when you started seeing, Friendster, MySpace and everything else. So the challenge, I think, for a lot of folks now is like building products or communities or experiences that are so interesting and so good that people are willing to figure out self-custody. So product market fit is hard on its own, but now you have to deal with something that is such a big onboarding hurdle. And I often see that products that focus on trying to totally eliminate the aspect of self-custody end up being closer to like the AOL keywords world, and less like the MySpace or Friendster. So it's a difficult thread difficult thing to thread.
I love how Anatoly always references back to Web 1 and Web 2. It's a very similar thought process that we go through at Decasonic. If Web 1 was unstructured data, a lot of spam in those Google searches. If Web 2 was about the social layer that connected all of us on MySpace and Friendster and Facebook, Web 3 now layers on financial transactions to the social layer. That's the financialization of what's going on right now. One of the hottest spaces in early stage venture activity right now is in DAO tooling. It's how do you solve a lot of these key bugs? So a quick market size would be if social networking, if social web is a $1 to $2 trillion opportunity, a lot of people believe, my competitors, myself, we believe that's an order of magnitude larger than Web 2 social. It might be
as cheesy as it sounds, everyone always tells you like to follow your passion and like go do those things. And that's what I heard during my college tenure there too. And I didn't really understand what folks were talking about. But what I was doing is I was a assistant to Professor Shaw's like research lab, and I was building stuff inside the Linux kernel. And like every day I would, like deal with these compiler issues and like systems programming issues that were well beyond what I understood as an undergrad. But I had fun doing it. And that grind of like iterating and working on problems that are a little too hard for you is what drove me to become, I think, the engineer that I am today. And like, this is why I enjoy the work that I do. So you have a ton of resources already where you're at, and really find those challenging problems that will keep you up all night, right? And make your brain sweat a little bit. So this is something that I heard like all the time, like day in, day out while I was at school, and none of it will probably sink for you until 20 years later as well.
For me, stay positive, stay optimistic. There's so much going on in the world today. It's easy to fall down the Twitter or Instagram rat hole and just get amplified negative news. We're sitting on a generational opportunity right now. The most successful builders are optimistic. They think about how to create a better world. That opportunity is 10x larger than negative technology. What wins Web3 is positive sum growth. How do you evangelize and incentivize around tokens that benefit the whole ecosystem? To sustain that success, it requires a positive mindset.
I would say, just keep an open mind and never easily miss anything. I remember I first learned zero knowledge proof back in year 1998, and I could never imagine, this thing which I couldn't really understand at that time would become so important for today's, all these applications, and you never know how those dots are getting connected. And I think we are really in a good time, because all these Web3, all these blockchain DAO are bottom up. So, which means that as an individual, you are you have a chance to really do great things, not to be monopolized by those tech giants. Yeah.
Suji, any closing words of wisdom?
Yeah, I think all the points already been mentioned by our panelists, right? So, again, just have something in your hand and try it, and probably talk to your professor even in class and say, I want to do this thing, and say, hey, I will just probably talk to my professor if I'm still a student here. I say, hey, I want to issue NFT to every student. Can I have the email list? And yeah, go ahead and do it. And reach out to the guests here, reach out to Anatoly, reach out to me. Not sure you're gonna get a reply in time, but I think we're gonna full support for every experimental thing. Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you so much to all of our panelists. I can't imagine we could be more thankful for all of your time here today. So just from the bottom of our hearts, thank you. Let's give our panelists a round of applause.